Fantastic. Thank you all for joining Overview and Scrutiny Committee, our virtual meeting. Of course, today is V-Day, so hopefully that means that we won't be virtual for too much longer, and we'll all see each other face to face sometime soon, which I know everyone's looking forward to. So hopefully that day will come soon. Present at today's meeting, members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, co-opted members and members of the Harrow Youth Parliament. Also present or will be present the portfolio holders for portfolio holder for finance and resources, and the portfolio holder for community cohesion, crime, as well as council officers. I think there's a cabinet briefing happening, so they may join us a little bit later on. Can I remind people of the protocols for holding virtual meetings? If you're not a member of the committee, keep your video switched off unless you are speaking. In case there are technical problems, we will adjourn the meeting until resolved. If they are unresolvable and the meeting is inquorate, we will abandon the meeting. The meeting is being videoed and audio streamed on the web. Can I remind people to switch off their mobile phones or anything that makes a buzzing sound during the meeting? If you want to get my attention at any moment, if you use the hand up function on Teams or the chat functions, or if that all fails, just unmute yourself and let me know that you want to speak. And finally, we have two substantive items on the agenda on IT and quarterly crime. These ones, because they're not related directly to a council decision that's coming up, can often go on as long as you give it. So I plan to aim for these sessions to have about 45 minutes. I'm not going to cut anyone off mid-sentence, and obviously if there's a flow of the discussion going on, we'll continue, but I aim to go between 45 or 50 minutes or thereabouts. Kanti, you've got your hand up.
Can I request IT to give us a bigger gallery to look at, please? On the screen, it's limited to 9 people. If there's a bigger gallery, could they please assist us with that?
I'm sure if that is possible, someone will be working on doing that. Going on. Thank you. Going on to the agenda. Item 1 is reserve attendance by reserved members. I have had apologies from Reverend Reeves. Are there any other apologies or reserved members? I don't see any. Item 2, declarations of interest. This has been published in advance in the supplementary agenda. Is there anything people have noticed since that has been published? Chris, your hand is up.
Yeah, sorry, Kanti. Sorry, it's actually not directly to do with this, but I will have to turn, or out of courtesy, turn my camera off at some stage, because I'll be connecting my blood supply to my dialysis machine, and you won't want to see the gory details. I will keep the audio on, so I'll be listening, and when I've done it, I'll turn back on halfway through the meeting. All right?
Okay, that wasn't quite the announcement I thought we were going to get. But,
yeah, I know. There you go, just to make your day.
Absolutely. Well, I wish you all the best on that. No other declarations of interest. Minutes, I know members have been asked in advance. Minutes of the 20th of October meeting, which is correct. And all members have confirmed they are happy with it. Has anything changed since then? No. So can I take those as approved? Item 4 is public questions. None have been received in the time. Item 5 is petitions. Are there any petitions to be presented? I don't see any hands up. So item 5 done. Item 6 is references from council or cabinet. None have been received. So moving on to item 7, which is update on implementation of new IT service. We have presentation by Ben Goward, our Director of IT, who I suspect is the first time attendee of the Harrow Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So can I welcome you to Harrow and the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. If you keep your presentation to around 5 minutes, yourself and the portfolio holder, Adam, and crucially, the committee is interested in the move as we brought the service in-house, but also how you coped with the pandemic and a ramp up from a fairly low level of IT infrastructure in March to where we are today. So if I hand over to you, Ben, and you and Adam can choose how you use that. So over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Councillor Shah. If it's okay, I'll share just a couple of slides that I've got, and I'll speak to those within the time limit that you suggested there. So I'll just bring those up. So I hope councillors can see the screen that I'm sharing.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So and Councillor Swirsky obviously will chip in, and if it's okay with everyone, I'll just make a start. So just, quite a quick introduction from me, a reminder of the timelines. In September 2019, Cabinet approved the recommissioning and reprocurement of Harrow's ICT support services contract, which had been with Sopra Steria for 4 years at that point, 5 years by the end, and was preceded by a Capita contract. When I came in as the Director of IT in April, we made the decision, obviously it was the start of the pandemic, to proceed with that transition away from Sopra Steria, and also to accelerate the Windows 10 and Office 365 deployment to support officers and members with the agile and flexible working that was needed. At the end of October this year, we did indeed come to the end of the Sopra Steria contract and transition to the new IT service model, which went live successfully, we think, in the main at the beginning of November. And we're now into the sort of next phase of the transformation of IT, obviously stabilizing the new service, but looking now to complete the migration of Harrow's technology systems to the cloud to support wider transformation and modernization, flexible futures, and obviously vacating the data center in Civic 1. This slide was the model that was proposed to Cabinet back in 2019, and I'll use it to talk to as well, because it is effectively what we have transitioned to with effect from the 1st of November. As it shows at the top, we've got a client-side team in Harrow employees, approximately 30 staff, who are now fully accountable and responsible for the IT service. And I hope some councillors will have noticed we're trying to instill values of customer service and process excellence. We've got staff like Darren Davis, who I know some of you will know, who are managing the user support team now. And now that we've got control of all aspects of the technology service and direct relationship with all of our partners, we're able to manage cost and performance much better, and we're able to embed new capabilities in IT, like a technology adoption team with new cloud expertise, etc. This model shows below the ICT client team a proposed new set of smaller kind of expert suppliers, and that's what we have transitioned to as well. Organisations like Version 1, Agilysys are providing some aspects of the 24/7 telephony support service. These smaller suppliers with a smaller scope, we think, are going to be more cost effective in the long term. That's certainly how it's playing out. We should see better levels of service availability because we have these direct relationships with the vendors now. We hope that users are already experiencing better levels of customer service. We'll come to that. We also have now in these partners new expertise, like we have on the client side, around cloud migration, around transformation of services through technology. So that's an overview of the proposed and the actual service model that has been implemented. I'm going to skip over some slides. I will share this if the committee would like after the presentation, which gives you some more information about what the actual model that we've implemented. I'll flip to this slide, which is a view of the new customer service portal that we have implemented for IT. We have, with the new 24/7 IT service, implemented this portal, so staff and members can now raise their issues and get most of them resolved 24/7. They can also raise incidents through this self-service portal on a mobile phone or through a computer, and we're seeing quite good take-up of that. 42% of all of our incidents are now being raised self-service, which is quite good channel shift. We obviously want to drive that further because it is more cost-effective and we think more convenient. Since the service went live on the 1st of November, we've dealt with 2,600 incidents, and 57% of those have been dealt with as a first-time fix. So that means that when the user called, we were able to fix the problem over the phone or through them accessing the self-service capability or the knowledge article on the portal. So the intention of that is to make it more convenient for staff and obviously more efficient for the organisation, because their problems get resolved much more quickly. And we track feedback on our IT services very closely. And at the moment, the feedback is just over 90% positive feedback. So, you know, that's a good, you know, we're very pleased with that for the first weeks of the service. Obviously, it's not all positive. There are still issues, and any negative feedback from staff or members, we follow up in person. So we make a point of contacting people who've left negative feedback directly. Again, there's some more information in the slide deck, but I will gloss over straight to the Windows 10 and Office 365 deployment. Obviously, you know, when I started here, the pandemic was in full swing. There was a Windows 10 and Office 365 project that had been started sometime before that. We wanted to make sure our staff were fully equipped to be agile and mobile, and members as well. And so one of the things that we prioritised was the deployment of the new Surface Pro, Surface Go devices to all staff, and the migration of all the Officer accounts to Office 365, so that features like Teams that I'm very pleased that we're all used to using now, and you know, the new mobile apps and so on were available to staff. And we think that's been successful. It's been really pleasing to see the adoption by officers and members of the new technology. The recent staff survey that was undertaken in the late autumn asked staff whether they had still had significant issues with IT. Obviously they did have at the start of the pandemic. There's a very significant improvement in that metric, which we were pleased about, but there's more that we need to do, and we recognise that. So we are rolling out new telephony solutions and support for people with home broadband issues, and more and more support on the actual adoption of these tools that we've deployed. But we recognise staff and members are not always 100% familiar with. We track the adoption of the technology very closely, so we can monitor with the tooling, sort of by department, who is, making great use of Teams, where we have needs to intervene more closely. And obviously, as we would expect during the pandemic, Harrow Council, in common with other organisations, is seeing a massive rise in the adoption of these tools. And that's going to continue to be a focus for us. Some other aspects now, looking beyond that, and again going at pace, we're thinking about forward drive and how to take this, this experience that our staff and members now have of using technology in this agile working mode, making sure that forward drive is fitted with, audio-visual capabilities, so that it's a really seamless experience to hold meetings, perhaps hybrid meetings in future, in the Forward Drive site, and we have got a lot of new improvements in the pipeline around the rollout of SharePoint, a new intranet site, really using the technology to support new ways of communicating with our staff and members, and making sure that in-person experience, as we do come back to Forward Drive, is very compelling. Another thing that we need to prioritise on, which is very closely linked to that, is the move out of the civic data centre. Harrow Council still has, as a function of its outsourcing history to some extent, a lot of systems that are hosted on premise, i.e. in the civic data centre, and we need to move those out into modern, what we call cloud hosting capabilities, which means that the applications themselves are hosted on the internet, they're kept up to date, and doing that should unlock a lot of value in terms of being able to provide new customer self-service capability, avoiding the kind of systems outages that we have suffered historically in Harrow to some extent. And obviously a very large centerpiece of that program is the Dynamics F&O capability that will replace the existing on-premise SAP finance and HR system, but also provide us with a new set of capabilities around business intelligence and employee and customer self-service that we hadn't had access to before. And then the final thing by way of introduction, councillors, I wanted to flag is the obvious and very high profile issue of cybersecurity. Some neighbouring councils like Hackney were affected very badly recently by what is called a ransomware attack, which is effectively a virus that is introduced to the organisation typically by clicking on an email, which then encrypts files on the organisation's file systems and requires you to pay a ransom in Bitcoin before you can get access to that data again. Hackney have been hit very badly by that. They were hit 2 months ago and they still have a lot of their major systems down. Soprasteria have been hit. You may be able to see on the screen there, Redcar and Cleveland were hit, and it notionally cost them £10 million to recover all of their services. So it is a very significant and growing risk to organisations like Harrow, and we are taking a number of steps to protect the council from that. We're significantly increasing the technical security controls that we have at Harrow, building on existing firewalls and deploying some new capabilities, sort of artificial intelligence capabilities that can monitor what is happening in our legacy data center and highlight us very early on if there is a risk. And we're also asking our users in Harrow, our service departments and our users, to be, very careful about opening attachments, and also to plan for the kind of systems outages that, we hope never happen, but we have to recognise could happen in an organisation like Harrow. And the other, and I'll end on this point, the other key thing that we need to do as an IT department is continue to, and if possible, accelerate that move away from the legacy on-premise systems to the cloud, because it is in all of these recent attacks that we've become aware of, it is the legacy on-premise systems that are vulnerable. So, councillors, I'll end at that point and I'll stop sharing my screen, and I'd welcome any questions.
Thank you. Before I bring in committee members, I thought, Adam, if you have anything to add.
All I wanted to add, Chair, is just a real commendation on Ben and his team, and actually our new partners as well, and Soprasteria on their exit. I mean, I think that what has been achieved in this year during the pandemic is pretty extraordinary. And if we think about the position we were in the first lockdown, March, April, when we really struggled to enable people to work in the new way, compared to the November lockdown, where it's been effectively reasonably seamless from a council perspective. That didn't come around by accident. That's the result of extraordinary work by Ben and his team during what was already an incredibly difficult time. And over the summer, many councillors would have experienced the incredible setup that they developed to roll out the 2,000 devices, Windows 10 devices. And that's only the tip of the iceberg what's actually been delivered. So it's taken us leaps and bounds in terms of our IT at the council, and I think there's still a long way for us to go.
Thank you, Adam. And the first question I've got is from Stephen.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and welcome to ONS, Ben. Thank you very much for coming and presenting to us, and it's very interesting, useful to hear an update on what's been going on. One thing I do have to say is it would have been nice to have had a copy of the presentation in advance. I think we did ask for that, and it was when we sort of agreed that it could be a presentation, not a paper. We did ask if it could come in advance, but obviously we appreciate the fact that you're here, and it's good to be able to sort of to ask questions. One of the things I did want to ask was in terms of obviously there's been a big shift towards doing a lot more services online, sort of customer services, and one of the problems we've had is the technology that sits behind it has been often quite an issue, particularly there's been times when people filled in web forms and they're not necessarily gone anywhere, There's, the ongoing issues around the planning portal and people having all sorts of problems with that, major outages, and having to have contingency arrangements for major planning applications. What's being done to address those issues?
Okay, I think Charlie has put his hand up, and he may, I may let him pull rank and come in before I bring in Ben or Adam. So I'm going to bring Charlie.
Councillor, thank you for that. That's really a conversation that's wider than just the IT part. Yeah. I don't actually know of any forms that have not go anywhere, but if you have examples, please send them to me. I'll be delighted to look at them. As far as the planning portal is concerned, that's as much to do as the back end system, which is under devolved apps and nothing to do with IT, although we're trying to bring it that way, as it is to do with anything to IT. It's also to do with the processes within planning, and we are considering doing a service review with planning to make sure that there's more joint between the front and the front end, i.e. the customer access part, and the back end. So it's not specifically to do with IT systems as such. It's as much to do with processes, and it's as much to do with the age of the planning system, which is under, let's say, a devolved apps application. As far as sending the presentation is concerned, my apologies, that was my mistake. There seemed to be a last-minute change in what you wish to discuss, so I stopped Ben passing you the presentation in case we had to update it. It then seemed that I was mistaken, and that what you wanted to discuss is what we have just done, so it was then a bit too late to pass it to you, so my apologies for that one.
Thank you.
Okay, Adam, did you want to come in on that point?
Yes, I mean, to echo Charlie's point, obviously that Ben's remit, and Ben will say more on this, is really the sort of core infrastructure around IT, and I think the improvements around that will clearly still make a big difference, because the ability for staff across the council to use reliable devices is fundamental to solving many of those problems. We do have a separate team in Jonathan Milburn and Ben Jones who focus on the front end, the user experience, and how that then processes all the way through to our operational teams. I think that they have done incredible work over a long period of time to make Harrow one of the most the easiest councils in the country, if not the world, to transact with. And I think we now have one of the most interactive websites of any municipal authority that there is, and personalised website as well. And there's more plans to do more on that. So it's really, really impressive, I think, what they've done in terms of the ability of people to conduct their business online, and we see that in the percentage of transactions that are conducted online. But as Charlie says, most of the issues that we've had in the past, whether a few years ago on bins, whether more recently on some challenges with planning, are actually around how do we make sure that the processes and systems are in place throughout the operation, not just at the front end. And some of that, as Charlie said, we've got upgrades planned across a whole stream of systems, planning, housing, parking, and so on, which will improve matters. But equally, we've got to, obviously look at some of the processes there as well.
Thank you. And that type of modal shift work, I mean, certainly the scrutiny group in its entirety, including the subcommittees and the leadership team, is something that will be looked at further as we go in through to the next year. So we can certainly add that to the agenda. Right. In terms of order, I've got Chris, then Dan, then Canty. So I'll start with Chris.
Yeah, thank you. It's actually not so much listening to conversations around Ben, but it's more linked into Charlie. One of the key things I found that I get a lot of complaints about from the public is the form filling. We don't see, we have, I hate to say it, we have forms beautifully designed by very clever people, but most of the people who look at the forms aren't quite so clever and need much simpler forms to be able to fill in and get the answers back. Having said that, we've then got to have, if it's got a feedback system, a very good feedback linked in through Ben's system to get the feedback out to them the other way. But what I've always said is we need to use, in inverted commas when I say this, idiots to do the forms, so that if an idiot can do it, anyone can do it. And that's why we need, and I think that's more in Charlie's realm than actually in Ben's, but the link back up comes through Ben's division so that we get the right answers out. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Sashi.
You
got promoted again, boy.
You keep doing that to me. I'm going to take that comment as heard. That Charlie's already responded to that point generally. So I'm going to move us on to Dan.
Hi. Thanks for that presentation. And I think from my short-sighted experience over the summer, there's been a marked improvement in how, digitally at least, we've been able to work.
You're mute. You've gone mute.
Did you get any of that?
We got that you've seen an improvement.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll skip the bit that I missed. My question is just around obviously the cultural shift using IT across organisations, certainly over the last year. My question is, from the analytics that you kind of flashed across the screen there, kind of what percentage would you give the council working effectively utilising Teams and other digital tools? And where would you expect to be in 6 months? And you also hinted at that there's some people that or departments that are requiring nudges to kind of make the most out of Microsoft Teams and the other programs. Are you able to share who some of those departments are?
Ben.
Okay, so Microsoft actually do attempt to give you what's called a productivity score for your organization, which in the analytics capability that all Office 365 customers have is a kind of measure of how much people are using features of products like Teams and OneDrive and Yammer and so on. And I think the last time I looked, we were sort of fairly midstream of that, around about 50%. And we're very much in line with other organizations there. That's because we are using products like Teams to do things like this, to have really good, video meetings like we might have done with Skype previously, but we're perhaps not using the features that exist within Teams to do document collaboration, to set up, quite rapidly set up project groups, to do task management in project teams and things like that. And we're still quite wedded to email, for example, rather than using Teams chat and things like that. So there are things that explain why we're around about the 50% mark. And where we expect to be in 6 months' time is exploring much more those new features of Teams, looking at people using documents in OneDrive rather than attaching them, hopefully reducing the email overload, that people are not so much slaves to their inbox, but have a variety of channels. And the technology adoption team that we've got now from the 1st of November exists to really help support that shift. And we do want to include elected members in that as well, in terms of some of the training and support that we can offer to members. In terms of which departments are the best and which are the least, I hesitate to say anything on that front. You'd expect IT to be reasonably at the forefront, and I try very hard to make sure that IT is, the IT teams are at the forefront of this. Obviously digital as well. But there's some, there's been some brilliant advocacy. I think it's fair for me to say, from members, but also from senior officers who really have embraced this and led from the front at the CSB level, which is and I mean that, it's a really good sign. I didn't see that in my last organisation so much.
Great. Dan, did you want to follow up? No. Okay, fine. Okay, in terms of orders, I've got Canty, then Sarah, then Jean. Canty.
Thank you, Chair. I've got quite a few questions. So I think I'm only going to ask two, and you can come back to me when members have finished theirs. Okay. So thank you for the presentation, Ben and Adam. Firstly, I probably think Adam will be better at telling us about this. Could you at least sort of indicate, in terms of what is the budget before the budget now, just indication of savings we're achieving through this process? Firstly, and Ben, in terms of one of the things you mentioned, the efficiency. So Just curious to know, in terms of efficiency, how are we actually measuring this? Do you have any benchmarks? Did you have any targets, and around what areas were this, and how you measured the performance? If you can help to explain that to us, please. Thank you.
Right, I'll start with Adam and then take Ben.
Great, thanks, Kanti. So I wish there was a simple answer on the budget, and hopefully there will be a simple answer in the future. Part of our challenge is that when we had a single contract with Sopra Steria, there was a lot of subcontracts in there, and it wasn't always totally clear exactly how much each item was. So now that we're breaking apart that contract, we've got different contracts. We've negotiated really good deals, and Ben could say more, with suppliers like our mobile contract and various others, which means that we think that we're probably doing better than we were before on that. But it's very, very hard to tell until basically all is kind of that we've come out of the wash. The other issue that's happening at exactly the same time is that we're migrating a lot of services to the cloud. That changes what is a capital cost when we upgrade, when we buy the servers, when we maintain them, when we replace them, and so on, into an ongoing revenue cost, because you pay for essentially what you use on an ongoing basis. So again, that makes it frustratingly complicated to get to a very simple answer. What we think is that there will be significant savings, and we will be getting to the bottom of that. They come from a variety of sources, but certainly we think that there are significant efficiencies in the new model, and in particular moving to the cloud-based service. But Ben might want to say a bit more on that. Just on efficiency, there might be some technical ways to measure efficiency around network efficiency, network performance, and so on and so forth, which I'm sure Ben can go into detail on. I think what we're not going to do is we're not going to start measuring, how many hours people's eyes have been staring at their screen, or some kind of, might look like Jeff Bezos, might be more interested in those kinds of productivity tools. And I think we're not interested in that at all in Harrow. In fact, quite the opposite. We are moving towards the model of you're managing to outcomes and to results, and not to bumps on seats.
Chair, can I just finish with Adam first before we jump to Ben?
Yeah.
So, Adam, I share your optimism, and I'm sure that's the way we are heading in terms of improvement. But I think my slight issue was that no one at all will undertake any project without having some ballpark figures or kind of figures in mind. It can't be a bottomless pit, on the other end, and hope for the best. So surely, Adam, you must have some indication that you can share with us, can you not?
So I think what we've done is we've been very clear about the amount that we're willing to invest in IT, and obviously, rolling out all these new devices has been a multi-million-pound investment program, as well as the new contracts and so on and so forth. So we're investing in the new Microsoft Dynamics program as well. So we know that we've got a multi-million-pound investment program in our IT solutions, and ultimately our budget is based on prudence. So we're not assuming large savings, but we're absolutely getting to the bottom of what those savings are going to be. And obviously that's a number that we'll come forward and come back to you with as soon as we have it.
Okay, Charlie wants to come in, I imagine, on this point before I bring in Ben. Charlie.
Just on the cost savings, the councillors may remember that within the original submission, there was a potential cost saving put in of several $100,000. We are looking at that in detail at this moment in time, and Ben is hoping to have something out by mid-December. As Adam alluded to, it's enormously difficult, and I went through before Ben arrived, with the accountants to go through line by line to try and devolve out what Sopra was actually costing us against which types of contracts we were coming in, and the equations got far too difficult even for our great accountants that we have. So we will not be spending any more money, most definitely. There will be a saving, but I cannot tell you at this moment in time what it will be. But it will be there, and we will know that in December. I should also, however, note, as you know, Councillor, that there are more reasons than just monetary savings why you do projects. There is much more value add. Unless we had started on this road, we would not be here being able to have virtual meetings. The council would have ground to a halt quite quickly. If we don't bring F&O, SAP is going out next year, and we will grind to a halt. Many of our systems are old and antiquated and not been brought up to date. So there are many other reasons for doing it. We have also taken out in the last 2 years that I have been here several millions from the capital budget that was going to be spent on IT projects that frankly were never going to come to fruition. We now have a much more streamlined strategic view of our IT needs going forward and a better and developing architecture against which to put those. So don't worry, your money is very safe with us, as a bank would say. Councillor, you also asked about, just going back to your first question on large gallery, if you click on your 3 dots, there is something called large gallery. If you click on that, you will be able to do it. But of course, if there are not enough people on the screen, then it won't make any difference to you, but it gives you a lot more people that you can see if there are more in the meeting. I hope that helps.
Great. And I'm sure if people enjoyed that discussion about the budget, the whole of the January Overview and Scrutiny Committee is on the budget. So come back to listen to that debate. And I'm going to bring Ben in if he wanted to add anything to the answers already given. Ben, you're on mute.
You think I would know not to be on mute. So I just want to reinforce what Charlie said there. We have in the original proposal around the new IT service a financial savings target. We are working absolutely to that target. We have a transitional year now with a lot of new IT services having been implemented, having to decommission the legacy infrastructure concurrent with that new, and there is a period of parallel run, which means that the timing at which those savings can be brought to bear is something that is complex, as Charlie suggested, and which we are working through at the moment. There is also the shift from capital to revenue, which all organisations are going through, which also has to be taken into account in this. So the new model is absolutely more efficient. How we present that back to you to show that I hope savings greater than, Charlie will kill me for saying this, but I hope savings that are greater than those originally committed in the Cabinet report will be realised by the Council. We will get to that point quite soon, but we're not quite there yet. And I don't think you meant this, Councillor Rabadia, but in terms of efficiency, if you wanted to measure staff efficiency, as Adam said, that's not really what we're about, but there are tools within Office 365 which tell you how much time you're spending in meetings, how much time you're working out of hours, which attempt to play back to individuals. It's very personal information, how they are working to help them manage their own efficiency. And ultimately, with an IT service, going back to the cost, there are Gartner benchmarks, there are professional, in IT, there are professional benchmarks which look at the number of users in an organisation and what the cost per user is for end user computing, networking, telephony, which we can always refer back to if we need to.
Great.
Sorry, Sachin. Ben, are you saying there are no specific targets or benchmarks? That's what I'm understanding. Is that what you intended to say? Or is that they're not precise at this point? Because you said everything is more efficient and more working better. So I just wanted to have some idea.
I was attempting to reinforce what Charlie said, which is that there was a financial saving that was targeted through this transition from the old model to the new IT service model.
Sorry, Ben, not budgets. I meant the actual way of working and how we are saving time. Sorry.
As an organisation writ large, for staff, yeah, I'm not attempting to track that in IT.
Okay, I think Charlie's got his hand up, but I'm giving you 30 seconds, Charlie.
I think I may understand what the councillor's after. There is a set of IT KPIs, if you like P1s, numbers of uptime, etc., which are tracked and which we have data for if you wish to see it, if that's what you're after.
Yeah, that's it, Charlie. Thank you. Yeah.
If you send that round. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to bring Sarah and then Jean. Sarah.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for the presentation and for highlighting the advances in IT services. I think this maybe builds on Dan's question, talking about variations of usage across the organisation. I was just interested in how we were addressing training needs of staff, how reflexive we're being so that we're keeping everybody on board and really maximising the opportunities that are available to us. Thanks.
Right. I'll bring Ben in.
So we've been working, thanks for the question, we've been working with the learning and development team to develop a whole set of online training materials which are on the learning management system, and we've been promoting availability of those, and we've seen really good take up actually of those interactive training sessions. We've also published some short video tutorials, which is how people like to consume that training, showing people how to use Teams and undertake meetings like this. And we've done an awful lot of hand-holding. We've created a new capacity in IT called the Technology Adoption Team. People like Darren Davis have been exhibiting the kind of things that we do as a technology adoption team. We will go out to individuals, members and officers, but also present to management teams and project teams, helping to explain to them how to adopt the new technologies. So that, I think, is, you know, that sort of approach is what's driven up the adoption levels to the extent that we have done so far. There's much more that we can do.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Jean.
Thank you, Sachin. I won't call you leader. Chairman. Just to say that I know how people are with IT and those who aren't familiar with it. And I had the glory of introducing IT and technology into the stock exchange way back. So I do understand people's hesitations and so on. But the other thing that I learned at that time was to take people with you. And I think what sounds as though it's happening, it sounds good, the technology adoption teams that you were talking about, Ben, etc. But I think there are lots of groups of people that don't seem to be having that same attention. One is members and the other one is residents. And I think what we need to do, and I'm responsible with Councillor Sue Anderson for member development, I think we do need to look at least how we can get a significant number of our members up to the same speed or usable speed, because there are differences, there are problems around harrow.gov, whatever you say. And I know you say devolved apps have got nothing to do with IT, but that's not how people see it. And I think from my point of view, my big ask around scrutinising this is you actually address some of these bigger problems in terms of taking you with you, as well as that. And I really do appreciate around the KPIs and so on, but you're never going to get the take up of that until you embrace people and take them with you. So one is member development. I'm happy to talk with Sue about this, and we could set up some regular webinars. For example, you talked about specific document collaborations, you talked about general portal information, etc. I'm very happy to work with you on doing that. Well, it needs to be time consuming. We need to invest something in that. And the other thing is obviously residents, and that takes more, and I'm sure that's some of Charlie's area of expertise as well. There are people who really do get frustrated, and you might say, well, the form's dead easy to fill in now, by the way, but people get frustrated. So what I'm reflecting to you is there are two things. One, you need to encourage people to get to a certain level so the use of the system is effective for our organisation and our delivery of services. And the other one is really, let's do something with what we're talking about now. Ron saying we're doing this and we're doing that. I'd like to see some sort of concerted plan that addresses some of these additional issues as I've outlined. Thank you.
Thanks. On the point of residents, we're certainly going to come back to that through the leads and PNF and others, and bring that all together around the customer journey, resident journey, whatever we're going to call it. So I'm going to leave that to one side, and just if I ask Adam to come back on councillor training.
Yes, certainly. I mean, just on the resident side, you know, it's a passion of mine. We had the Universal Credit Commission a year or two ago, and one of the big themes there was around digital inclusion. I think there's much more we can do on that. It is just, we have Google Bus around. It is challenging. I think you've got to engage people in the right way. You've obviously got to make sure accessibility is at the heart of all your on your digital provision. Absolutely. But I think there's definitely more we can do. I look forward to further conversations on that.
Sorry, can I just sorry, I apologise, Adam. I don't like the idea that what I've said about residents and things is dismissed by the chairman, because I think we need to have an integral or integrated pathway, and we might be taking it up later on. But if you don't start doing something now, which you obviously are, that could be reported as an integrated report to us at ONS, rather than having it on a separate limb. Do you see the difference?
It's absolutely not dismissed. It's actually increasing the level of importance by putting it in one place. Charlie's already responded to the basic point. We're going to have it all in one go and do it with the right officers, talking about the journey and everything that's going on around modal shift and everything, and that's something we've discussed and we're definitely going to do. So absolutely not dismissing that point.
Thanks for that, sir.
And I think this meeting, and this is where Charlie mentioned about the slides, was that bringing Ben in here, the real focus here was we've done this massive IT transformation in Harrow. It's a bit techy, to be honest, but it is really important. But obviously, we look, I think the external facing piece is a sort of slightly different team and very important different conversation. Absolutely. Just want to take issue, Councillor Lamb, about the support for members. Please. So I think, to be honest, I think we have shown a lot of love to councillors in this process. And, I look back, Councillor Lambman, at our first ever virtual cabinet meeting, which I would say, started with some hitches, let's say. But I also remember, a member of staff driving down to one of your colleagues' houses, and I think reaching there in about 20 minutes to socially distanced in their backyard, help her with her iPad or kit at the time. So, I think it's a good illustration for us that change is difficult, and it's really, really important that we focus on it, because I think too many things in Harrow's past, technology-wise, have been introduced without that element of support around it, which is why we never embraced the old version of SharePoint, for example, internally. So there's a real opportunity here, and I think Ben's talked about what we're doing around technology adoption to absolutely make sure that people feel comfortable with the new kit. What I would say, and I think Ben would echo this, is that we're absolutely not at the end of the road. In fact, this is a great milestone, but it's a sort of end of the beginning, if you like, because all of those apps that you talked about, a lot of people in the council, including councillors, are still using applications that are old, that rely on sort of the clunky systems and aren't working the way we would like. Over time, we are of course looking to refresh all of that. And I think the experience, the communication is really important, because I don't want people to believe it's over now. If their IT is not working perfectly, then that's how it is. This is a work in progress, and I think over time people's experience is going to be really transformed. And I think actually the ambition here is to leapfrog from one of the poorest councils from the perspective of IT capability to actually one of the leading ones, and I think we can do that, and it's a really exciting program to be part of.
Thank you. Just one point then, Sashin, around these webinars that apparently in various forms being staff included in that. Is there some way that we can give our members something, we could talk to Sue about it, some way of having a series of webinars that members can opt into? And I don't think it's anything about giving people certificates and things. It's just for individuals to get up to that level where we're all working at least similarly, and that right sort of level, right stuff, Surface Pros and stuff, which I try and throw out of the window occasionally. But, so we can actually have a proper development or training plan, whatever you want to call it. So Charlie mentioned it, and obviously Dan did, but I would like to see us commit to something and see what it looks like.
Absolutely, and there are lots of people nodding on my screen, so we'll take that as Charlie for 20 seconds.
I get 20 seconds. Thank you, Chair.
30.
Just to plug something that Adam, I know, is very much backing, and that is a small working group of cross-party members to help us on flexible futures. I know that may not sound related, but actually the ability to use agile technology is perfectly part of flexible futures, and it's a discussion I'd like to have on all those different apps that you are or do not have available that you would like, as well as training, etc., etc. So more of that later.
Great. Canty, you wanted to come back. I don't see any other hands, so I'll bring Canty in now. Are you on mute?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got a few questions, if I can please ask them. So, I mean, probably is Ben mostly helping out with this. So you mentioned that there is a sort of time frame of moving from SAP to something else, which I didn't quite catch. And I'm linking that with customer service, because some of our forms and what we provide is probably linked to SAP. I could be wrong. So that's one question. Is there a time frame of when this move is going to be happening? Second question is around the fact of data centers and cloud and all that. So just trying to understand. So are we still going to have servers, which I understand are going to be all based at forward drive? Or is it exclusively everything on the cloud now, or are there parallel systems? So that's my second question, Ben. My third question, you mentioned about concerns about cybersecurity, and you mentioned Hackney getting hacked, for example. So and you mentioned some measures we're taking. So have we got external expertise on these, or are we trying to resolve this in-house? And Adam probably can come into this. Have you started saving for any bitcoins if you're ever hit, sort of thing? Can I just leave you with those questions for now?
So when we worry where the council's reserves are being held in bitcoins, that's when we will panic. Ben.
On that last point first, I wish I had bought some Bitcoin recently, because I've seen the price of that, and it's yes, that would have been a smart investment.
Volatile.
But very volatile, yes. In terms of the timeframes around moving to SAP, SAP is our internal finance and HR system primarily. So it is not actually responsible for supporting the majority of our customer interactions directly. So we do have a clear time frame for that. It's a project that isn't driven from IT, although we're supporting it, and that is going live in its first iteration at the start of the next financial year, and then there is a phase later in the spring and early summer. I think really the changes to the customer experience will come through a variety of means, but a large part of that is about the move to the cloud and the change from our quite legacy on-premise systems, which I know some councillors mentioned having been problematic. There was mention of the planning portal, changing from those to newer systems. And our intention is not to rehost legacy on-premise servers from the Civic Centre into Forward Drive. It is to move to the cloud. And when we move to the public cloud, we typically move to a model where those systems are managed by the vendors, and they're what's called evergreen. They're kept up to date with the latest versions, and those latest versions are typically the best for supporting a really good customer experience. So that's my answer to your second point. And on the third point around cybersecurity, as it happens, we do have an external consultant with some sector experience advising us on that. But also, Harrow is one of 440 UK local authorities. There's a lot of guidance that comes out from the National Cybersecurity Council, from the London Office of Technology Innovation, a whole range of professional bodies, which is quite prescriptive, and we implement those recommendations along with the government recommendations around secure connection into their networks. So there is, I think I would say there is a good degree of external expertise going into this. It's certainly not homegrown.
Great.
Okay, can I, Sachin, I've got a few more questions, if I can finish off with a couple.
If you're quick.
I'll be quick. So Ben, in terms of, and I come back to this customer service element, which quite a few of our colleagues have raised today. So I think we'll be tracking that quite a bit. So one of my concerns is that I know our website has been improving, and it's got to improve more. There was a time where I think you started using other cloud-based services for kind of providing service which you couldn't get working straight away. I'll give you an example. The low traffic neighborhood scheme, I probably think it was on Amazon Web Services. So is that still the way to go? Is everything going to be in one place? And have you been informing the public by putting any links on our main website to say there's something else about this consultation on a different platform? Because I haven't seen any. So yeah, that's one question. And in terms of that, I do notice you using Amazon Web Services, and I could be wrong, but I think you are. Does the council have any kind of ethical concerns about using Amazon generally, or their service or products? I know they're the market leader in a lot of the provisions in the IT sector.
Ben.
So I have to confess, Council, I'm not familiar with the LTN scheme and how that was provisioned on the website. We don't tend to use Amazon as an IT department. We have, for various reasons, quite a significant relationship with Microsoft, which means that we use their alternative public cloud offering, which is called Azure. And we actually, Azure, a bit like Amazon, is a public, what's called a public cloud offering. It's Microsoft's flavor rather than Amazon's flavor. And we have our services hosted within Azure UK, data centers. So the data remains in the UK, and from a kind of data protection perspective, privacy perspective, it's covered under UK law. And you asked about the ethics of that. I think that might have been a specific question about Amazon, but obviously, when we're procuring public cloud hosting like Azure, we do take into account the environmental footprint of that data center hosting, social value considerations in the procurement.
Sorry, could you just quickly come back on the website improvements, please, if I missed out anything there? Or did you know the question?
If I may, digital and the website is not Ben's area. That's part of my head of customer service and digital, Jonathan, to whom we'll be coming along to talk about all that stuff. I suggest we put that within the wider remit as we've just discussed on modal shift, etc.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you, Charlie.
I can't see anyone else. I mean, I think, my reflections of the council's IT system coming almost 11 years as a councillor is that the last 6 months have been a phenomenal improvement, absolutely amazing. I mean, I have to say, I came into the pandemic thinking there's no way. I mean, half the time I couldn't get my emails to work, and suddenly we've now gone all home working, Teams meetings, all generally working very well. Yes, Adam reminds us the first cabinet meeting was a bit of a disaster, but actually since then we've moved most of the council committees online. We've shifted most people on staff, and we've done it while bringing the services in-house, and I think all Ben doing since you started in April. So clearly your what you brought to the council has really made a substantial difference. And I do think this committee, although we've focused on areas where there are a few things we can do better, there are lots of things that have been so well improved. And I think as the overview part of this committee, the overview and scrutiny part, I think is why we wanted to bring this here, to actually say the support that the IT has done to bring this council to allow us to be all home based has been amazing. I know, as much as I want to end this all home based virtual meetings, it's only been possible through the work done. So can I thank you, Ben, Charlie and others, and Adam and anyone else that's been involved in this. We've had a really good discussion. My notes say I should summarise any outcomes. I'm not going to do that, but what I will say is there's clearly a want and a requirement to talk further about IT, but also how we use IT, how we communicate with residents, and that's something we'll add to the work programme going forward. On that basis, can I thank anyone here that is for that item? If you want to stay for the next item, please do, or if you want to go and have dinner, you can do that as well. So thank you all, and I'll move us on to item 8. I'll move us on to item 8, which is Quarterly Crime Report 2020, and we have a report on this. And before I bring in Alex and Krishna to introduce the report, I want to just make a point. Steve and myself met with Ed Baden from the police last week to discuss this report, and there's a bit of confusion about the legislative position we're in terms of discussing this report. It is the Safer Neighbourhood Board that will generally scrutinise and hold the police to account and not the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. However, it is custom and tradition for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to look at crime data, to talk to the police and give our views. So that is where we're going to be. I think it doesn't stop a good debate. What I would request is if members think, if you've got a particular view about how things, how you'd like the police to react in future, if you address that to Krishna as the portfolio holder, who's a member of the Safe and Neighbourhood Board, he can take that on in his role and take the police that way, which is the proper way, formal way of doing it, rather than the Overview Scrutiny Committee perhaps giving a different request to the police than the Safe Neighbourhood Board, and that will put them in a very difficult position. So on that basis, I'm not sure who's going to start. Alex, are you going to introduce this board?
Yes, I was just going to do a little introduction. I'm conscious of time, Chair, so on that basis, I won't say too much. I think the report, in terms of the overview report, covers where we currently are on this. So the council is duty bound via the Crime and Disorder Reduction Partnership, which is Safer Harrow for Harrow, to produce a strategic assessment every year, which is the assessment of crime, which also then supports the community safety strategy, which is one of the statutory plans for the local authority as part of the support we get through the Crime and Disorder Reduction Partnership. Given COVID and given our capacity, what we were planning to do before the second wave hit was to do the strategic assessment at this point, and then a review of the strategy as part of that as well. With best will in the world, our capacity has been significantly hit. So we wanted to try and do something at least in terms of engaging with the committee. So what we've done is we've provided what we always bring on a quarterly basis through to Safer Harrow, which is our Q2 performance report, which goes to the end of September, but also has some further updates from our partnership with the local police as well into November on some certain key statistics and key areas of crime, so that there's an opportunity for the committee to engage on the basis that right now, with the delay of the mayoral election to May 21 rather than May 20, the next iteration of the Mayor's Police and Crime Plan won't be available until either the autumn or the new year 2021. So in terms of doing a broader refresh of the community safety strategy, it seems more sensible for us to do that on a fundamental basis for the 22 year rather than but start that work in 21 following the fact that we'll have the new mayoral police and crime plan. So part of this today was just about keeping the committee engaged in terms of what's happening. And of course, when we came in July, there was a clear interest shown as to what the impact of COVID and lockdown has or would have on crime and community safety numbers. And therefore, there's an opportunity to review what that impact has been through the report today. So I'll pause there for any words that Krishna might want to say as way of introduction. And just as an anecdotal side, I've been here 11.5 years and the IT has never been better. So just in terms of endorsing the comments made on the last item.
Thank you. And we also have Ed Baldwin from the police, and Ed, I wonder if you could introduce yourself and kind of your role in the BCU.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just turn my camera on so you can all see me now, and just introduce myself. My name's Ed Baldwin. I am currently the Acting Chief Inspector in charge of Neighbourhoods and Partnership for the North West BCU. What I cover is in regards to your dedicated ward officers from the Safe Neighbourhoods side of things, safer schools, officers, youth engagement teams, the partnership proactive teams. I also deal with all sort of partner liaisons across the North West BCU.
Fantastic, thank you. And Krishna, did you want to, before we move into questions, Krishna, did you want to add anything as the cabinet member responsible for the area?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as a portfolio holder, my responsibility to combat the crime within the Harrow itself. But this year is a very unprecedented time where, you know, the Met Police especially have to put up with the to combat the crime in Harrow. as well as to deal with the COVID-19 legislation. So it's a combined of both. And I think that again, our council enforcement officers also did the amazing job, and providing all that. I think this year we are looking at the crime data. We have done so well, I would say, but I do have some details as well. If we wanted to highlight few good side of it, where we have done in 2020. At the beginning, you could see the burglary rate is a significant reduction in burglaries. At the beginning, from the beginning of this year. And you could see the non-domestic violence with injuries, sharp reduction on that one. And the antisocial behavior is a rise in antisocial behavior. And the motor vehicle theft, the theft from a motor vehicle is reduced. And the motor vehicle theft is slight. I don't think there is any change on that one. And the highlights like knife crime, show reduction this year, which is a good sign. But the gun slight trend in gun crime, and the domestic offense upward trend, sexual offense reduction, is continuing. And the hate crime public perception is high, but finally the racist and religious hate crime in Harrow remain the lowest. So these are the good things, some of the good things that you could see, even though we are the Met Police and Council are battling with the COVID-19 and the crime in Harrow. All I would like to say is, still, I'm proud to say that we are the second lowest in London. And maybe I could say we are equivalent to the first lowest, which is Richmond. There is not much of a difference from Richmond and Harrow itself. So I would say we are combinedly, we are the lowest, proud to say we are the lowest in London. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you. And Alex, remind us, David Harrington is also on the call, who's done also on the meeting, that's also done a lot of the analysis for the data. So if there's any very specific data questions, he'll be able to answer that. I'm going to bring Stephen.
Oh, thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you all of you for coming to speak to us today. Very good to see you all. This is really a question from a sort of a community safety and a sort of policing point of view. Obviously, we've just heard that on a number of the measures that we're often concerned about in Harrow, particularly things like burglary, robbery, violent crime, that sort of thing. It appears that we are, year on year, currently we are lower than, quite significantly lower than we normally are, and obviously that will have a big element of that will have been down to the pandemic in various ways. But is there anything we can learn from those reductions that we've had this year that we can actually apply in future years to try to keep those crimes from sort of shooting sort of back up again once everything is lifted and people are circulating again more normally?
Okay, who wants to take that on? Ed or Alex? Or Alex has got his hand up, so we'll go with Alex.
So thanks for the question, Stephen. I think part of the challenge is there's a number of variables on the move on this one. The pandemic itself is a very, very unique thing in terms of its impact. And obviously going forwards, we are expecting an economic shock of some form. We all know that there is some form of correlation, even if it's not necessarily purely causality, between economic levels and crime. So I think whereas you're absolutely right, there's been downward trend, I think part of the challenge is making sure that we understand the right lessons to apply to how we are acting in this way, rather than just assume that all things that have happened are therefore the opportunity to take. I mean, Ed will be able to talk much more specifically around policing and what's worked from a policing perspective on this, but I think on the broader context, I think there are a number of other factors, as I say, that, you know, makes it slightly tricky to draw the lessons from what is in effect a very unique set of circumstances.
Thanks. Can I bring Ed in, and then I think Krishna wanted to make a comment as well, so I'll bring in Ed in first, then Krishna.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the flippant side of me would say if you want to improve your burglary figures for the next 3 or 4 years, is have a virus every year and have a lockdown every year. I think there's no secrets in the fact that burglars are opportunists. By having everybody sat at home, working from home, we take away that opportunity. Therefore, burglaries will go down. There'll still be the odd one or two, yes. You're never going to get rid of any of it. However, by having them there, it does mean people at home, it does mean that the opportunities for them to commit burglaries or residential burglaries is a lot lower. But as Alex has pointed out, when we have had previously economic issues, such as a good few years ago now, where there was a number of people made unemployed, I'm trying to think of the exact word, but you'll have to excuse me. I'm going to say depression then. But I suppose there was a little bit in regards to the economy. We did see that burglary and opportunistic theft crimes did rise as people weren't able to afford things as freely as they do. So the short-term gains that we've got over this year, we may see some long-term losses because as crime goes down, the only way for it to go is back up again. And as we return to a bit of normality, we will see that start to rise. So this year is going to skew figures for the next 3 to 4 years, I would say. And what it has allowed us to do is take a breath, be able to reclaim a little bit of, for want of a better word, reclaim the streets in a way, because we're able to focus on crime. Over the last few weeks, going over the bonfire night period and also Halloween, we've had Operation Autumn Nights running, which we've been able to focus onto burglaries, because we do see over that period, not just for Harrow, but for the whole of Northwest BCU, that with the nights drawing in, we don't see so much of a rise in violence, but we do see a rise in burglary and antisocial behaviour. And we were able to focus on that burglary, and we've been able to see across the whole of BCU a 15% decrease over that time. And on some of the targeted wards, which some of them were on Harrow, we saw around about in average 56% decrease in regards to burglaries, which helped to feed into that 15%. So that is what the learning that we've had is. It's been able to allow us to focus a little bit more on certain crimes such as burglary, whereas before our crime rates were so much higher than they are currently. It means that we've had to focus elsewhere.
Thank you. Krishna.
Yeah, when I attended some of these safer neighborhood panel meetings, some of the members, like in Cannons and Belmont and so forth, you know, they said they have the WhatsApp group. You know, they like the high street. They own the high street. They own their own street, and they know that's the community-led, intelligent-led, protection. So I think the way to do it is to build that bond within the street itself, each and every street. We have our neighborhood champion for almost 2,000 champions within Harrow. I've had a meeting with the mayor's deputy mayor's office a couple of days ago. Is in all boroughs as a lead member. I attended that meeting. So I actually said to them that we have got approximately 2,000 champions in Harrow if the Met Police want to make use of them. So along with each and every resident within our Harrow, if we can all play our part, I'm sure we can nail this down. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to bring in Jean and then Candy. Jean.
Thanks, Sachin. Two very different points, if I may. One is I agree with WhatsApp, by the way. That's brilliant. We get a lot of intelligence from our ward in terms of that we're allowed to be on their WhatsApp. If you're not, then it's their permission. But if you can be on the WhatsApps, it really does make a difference in terms of what's going on. That's where we got the understanding about the theft of the from the cars. God, I was talking about it earlier. The
catalytic
converters. That's the one. Thank you. But anyway, my first question, and Ed might remember this because we had a conversation with Alex and Canty when I was sitting in my car, and we were talking about domestic violence and domestic abuse. And one of the concerns I had then was that even though there may be low reporting on one level, we know from our own intelligence sources that there is a rise in DA. There is, if you like, a pressure cooker environment because people in COVID circumstances are thrown together more than they might be normally. And I was wondering how this was reported. It says here, domestic offences in Harrow have seen an upward trend. Do we know how what's happening and how we're managing policing it? Please, Ed.
Ed. Sorry, just looking for the mute button there. I do have the figure.
Have we all lost Ed?
Yeah.
Figures would look like me, David.
Yes.
Let me know when you can hear me again.
Ed, yeah, we've got you back again.
I could hear you, but on the screen had frozen. Maybe you can come and improve my IT. Okay, I've lost all your screens. Oh no, you're all back with me now. Thank you. I was just going to say I'm not able to share the screen on here because I don't have that access. But I believe we do have figures in regards to it. How that's being policed. What do you mean in regards to how is it being policed? What preventative work are we doing?
Well, yes, it really is the whole story, isn't it? It's one, because we're more alert to it now. We know what's going on. How are you getting to know and understand it? And I think you and I talked about victimless prosecutions and things like that. So it's how we identify it. And there's also, I understand, a number that people who are under threat can ring, but not necessarily speak to anyone. So it's that sort of thing, what sort of strategies are being used to support people who are suffering in this environment.
So it's not exactly my area of expertise. What was safeguarding, now public protection, is our strand that works for that. In regards to what we are doing around that, we do work very closely with the victim care side of things, speaking to the victims to learn from that. There are a number of like you mentioned there, that phone number that you're able to ring. I believe it's been quite well publicised in the news for people who are afraid to phone 999 but still ring up, and I think they usually ask for a pizza.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm not able to give you any more detail in regards to it because, as I say, that's our public protection side of things, and they will be able to give a far more in-depth.
How about prosecution?
Again, with regards to the victimless prosecutions, that's something that I do know is done by the public protection officers. I don't have those figures in regards to how many are victimless and how many are actually victim cooperated prosecutions.
Okay.
To be able to give you that, Jane.
Okay, I mean, it'd be useful for me to know that bit, and also how many are actually across the piece being prosecuted. There's no need to press that point now. Thank you. I had one more question, if I may, Sasha. It's very quick.
Just, Jean, before you ask the question, because both David Harrington and Alex put their hands up midway through that, so they may be able to help us on the answers. So if I bring in David, then Alex.
So I actually put my hand up just when we lost Ed just to cover that for a bit, but he's answered adequately. So I guess I would only just add at this point that in terms of the data in these areas, we now have a much improved situation with the Northwest BCU sort of bedding down. We now have an excellent colleague called Jagdeep or Jags, who leads on the analysis from their side. So we're working very closely with them, and some of that's reflected in the report today. I'm very happy to follow up with Jags on some of those issues that Councillor Lamman has raised there to save you doing it, Ed. I'll do that directly and come back with some figures there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Alex.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, and thanks for the question, Jean, because the data is just part of the issue or part of the overall system when it comes to domestic violence. And one of the things that we've been doing this year is looking at how we can recommission some of our domestic violence support services, which stretch out into things like hospitals and linking in with what the MOPAC funded independent domestic violence advisors work are doing, because not all things are necessarily reported to the police in terms of domestic violence. It's up to a whole range of different partners to actually see when someone has been a victim, and therefore what the right intervention may well be on that and the support around that. The voluntary sector is very diverse in terms of its support around domestic violence in Harrow as well. So I guess the combination of all of that, and therefore linking it into, you know, trying to make sure that we have what's classified as the safe life support in terms of the caseload that we have for IDVAs per 1,000 population, is such that our services are going to be enhanced as we re-procure them next year in terms of how we support victims, and also the throughput to give confidence to those that are victims of domestic violence in reporting it through and getting the necessary support as well.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay. Oh, Jean, you did have another question. Yes.
I did. It's very quick. Well, I don't know if it's very quick or not. This came from our local SNT, and Chris has seen it as well. It's the tags that are being used outside houses now. So the one that we were sent was a circle with a line through it in yellow paint, I think. Is that something, I'm sure you are aware of it, is that something that we should be advising our residents about, and what's being done by our police, etc.?
So that is something that isn't new. It's been around for quite a while. If you are seeing such tags, then please do get in touch with us. I will speak to our local safe neighbourhoods to probably do a little bit of a media campaign around it on Owl Neighbourhood and Twitter to advertise that.
Well, it came from the SNT. I suppose what I was really looking for is that how it works. Yeah, okay. If you would, that's great. Thank you.
No problem.
Great. Thank you. I've got Canty, Jeff, Dan, and Sarah. So I'll go in that order. Canty.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, Councillor Krishna Suresh, yes, you highlighted our numbers are lower, but I wouldn't necessarily be proud of them, because even a single unit of crime in Harrow is not something that we really would wish on anyone. So yes, it's useful to know that it's still in the lower cases, but if I can just turn the attention to something that's actually not here or you didn't mention, and I link that to page 29, which is page 11 of the report that we've given. It's to do with victim satisfaction with police. So it raises two issues. So it actually says the level of satisfaction has actually fallen or decreased compared to the London average, so which is not a good point. So I'm just wondering now, if you look at the statistic that are actually missing here, because one of the issues that the way you stop crime or reduce crime is to say you deal with the problem. So have you got any data on what is the actual sort of prosecution rate in terms of, compared to the actual crime numbers? Do we have those numbers? And then how is that linked to the victim satisfaction with the police? And my second question, if I can just finish it now, so then who wants to come in? It's great to see, and we wouldn't expect anything less in terms of the priorities, in terms of the crime. So we mentioned 4 areas, the burglary, the non-domestic violence injury, ASBs, and motor vehicle crime. It's good saying that, and that's great to have some kind of target, but what are the actual steps? What are the actual kind of actions being taken, by everyone, by the council, by law enforcement, by, whatever advisory teams there are, to actually say, this is how we're going to actually reduce this? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to bring Ed in to start, and I see David as well.
So, yeah, regarding the satisfaction side of things to start with, it would be useful to see the sanction detection rate numbers. I don't have those numbers for you currently. Satisfaction and confidence is something that I do think has dropped off the agenda for quite a while from the MPS. However, it is something that is very much now at the heart of what we're going to be doing moving forward. I'm sure you're all aware in regards to the Mayor's plan that came through the other week. There's been a lot of talk in regards to how we're going to be bringing that in and working with our partners to do that. And we will be bringing in a team of officers on the Northwest BCU to help deliver that engagement side of things, which will hopefully have a positive effect, not only on our satisfaction, but also on our confidence from the public. To explain what the difference is, satisfaction is basically if you had interaction with the police. That's how you are, whether you're satisfied with us. Confidence is whether it's from somebody who hasn't had contact with the police, and whether you're confident with us, to explain the differences between the two. So hopefully that will have a positive effect on us going forward from here. It's something that is very topical at the moment, and hopefully will improve. Can you repeat your second part of your question, Ken?
Yes, Ed. Could you sort of make us aware in terms of what's the exact data or statistics on the percentage or the rate of sort of prosecution or bringing a case to completion, saying crimes detected, it's been resolved, someone's been caught or charged and jailed?
Yeah, sorry, that's what I referred to as sanction detections. That's a result of a investigation, whether somebody is charged, go to court, given a conditional caution, or not. I don't have those figures on me to be able to explain that to you.
Okay, so in terms of what is being reported to us, which is great in terms of we actually get to know the number of offences. Now, I think as a reflection, would it be possible in future to bring us that data as well in terms of the categories we've actually seen today?
I think that is something that will need to be taken up in one of the other meetings in regards to the scrutiny of that.
David's nodding.
Yeah, so I'm very happy to follow up on what we can report. We have looked at sanction detection rates before. What I want to do is take it away and see what would be meaningful and be helpful to present in the future. So I'll pick up the data issue there. I just wanted to say on satisfaction rates, we do need to be mindful of the time lag in this data. So the public attitude survey from which that comes is from back in, there's a time lag on it, it's back in March. And we're talking in terms of the drop, we are talking about the point at which, lockdown was coming in, and possibly people were, their perceptions and their emotions around that time were probably quite difficult. So that might be partly the explanation. We saw the big increase in ASB at that period as well, which is partly people reporting other people breaking COVID regulations. So I think we really do need to look at that over time to understand what's happened there and why there's been such a big drop, both locally and across London.
Okay, Krishna, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, the last question, the councillor, you raised it, the high volume crime, burglary, non-domestic violence with injury and behavior things to do with you need to, as a resident, you would be the panel members and where
I think
you have
Krishna, I think we're losing you. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. I'm not sure if it was just me.
No, we can't hear you.
No,
I think it's because people got their mics turned on, Jackson.
Oh, right, okay.
Can you hear me okay now? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Councillor, you know the last question you raised about the high volume crime. This is other residents or as a councillors, can you hear me?
You're cutting in and out. I'm not sure if you want to. What we'll do is we'll move on to Alex, and we'll see if you can maybe move to another room to improve your Wi-Fi. That might help.
Yes, it's the occupational hazard of online meetings, isn't it? I guess, despite quality of IT, it's still reliant on Wi-Fi strength, etc.
Yeah.
So the point I was just going to talk back to was what Kanti's question was around what are we doing.
This is better, I think.
Okay, Alex, if you continue, Krishna will bring you in after Alex.
Yeah, sure.
So one of the things that we do receive from the Mayor is London Crime Prevention Fund and also Violence Reduction Unit money. So in the report, we highlight the fact there's circa 250k that we've got there from the London Crime Prevention Fund, an additional 50k per year for this year and the next around Violence Reduction Unit money. So we do tend to use that against those priorities in terms of initiatives, working with voluntary sector partners, and also things where, from the violence, vulnerability and exploitation perspective, it's about trying to do early intervention around trying to ensure that young people who are potentially more easily exploited to get involved in such behaviour are given different ways of seeing pathways before they're actually closed and they're sort of entrapped within a system. So we are doing things like that, but at the same time, there are a number of forces moving against us on this, and there's only so much that £300,000 worth of interventions each year can do. And of course, part of that is that a third of that money goes onto our domestic violence services at this moment in time, given the fact that the core funding from the local authority for those services is non-statutory, and therefore there isn't a lot of it at all. So that's just one response in terms of some of the things that we are doing, as highlighted within the report around those priority areas.
Okay, great. I'm going to see if we can bring Krishna back. Let's see.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Absolutely perfectly this time.
Okay. Yeah, as Alex said, I think the way we can combat this the high volume crimes, like we did in Wheelstone, we formed an action group where, you know, the community volunteers, community partners, traders, all combined, and we all, as with the Safer Neighborhood team, we all work together. So this is not about pointing out to the Metropolitan Police or pointing out to the council why are these crimes are increasing. This is a community intelligence-led program. We, you know, the residents, the community has to help us to help them to, you know, bring down the crime level. This is why the Safer Neighborhood team panels are in each and every ward. Those members are committed, dedicated. They wanted to give something back to the community. So that's why I've been pushing all the councillors to be part of that Safer Neighborhood panels, so that you could understand which street is matter to you, where the crime rate is increasing, where the burglaries is happening more, where the motor vehicle theft is happening more, so that we prioritize. We give the priority to those, you know, those particular areas, and making sure that is handled so well with the help of Metropolitan Police, and we have an enforcement officers as well. It's combined work. Thank you.
Sorry, just quickly follow up with Krishna, Councillor Krishna Suresh. A councillor, so in that case, it seems like you have some kind of strategy or steps you kind of recommend or suggest. So would you mind sharing that with all the councillors by, you know, not necessarily target areas, but is that something you can replicate to say this is the plan, or, you know, this is what you should do, this is how you get involved? Because one of the things we've been told, like, for example, the other aspect of it, neighborhood champions, like, we're not allowed to know who they are as well, for example, because of GDPR and so on and so forth. So it becomes difficult working with them. So I think if you've got a better strategy or a clearer strategy, it will help for you to sort of actually formulate it, and maybe get involved other councillors involved in terms of formulating it. And, you know, if you think it's that kind of straightforward, then let's kind of share it with everyone. I mean, I don't know what you think about that suggestion.
Chair, can I?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. As I said, the councillors all are directly. I have given the details of all the safer neighborhood teams, contact details, the sergeant, your ward sergeant details, your ward safer neighborhood panel, PCSOs, PCs, as well as your panel chairman to attend that meeting. it happens every quarterly. Now it is virtual meetings are taking place where you will be able to get an up-to-date statement, the quarterly one, where the crimes level are within your ward, which street, and what kind of a crime it took place, and so forth. So it is easier for you to deal with your ward. I mean, each and every ward have a panel. So and they give you the sergeant or the PC, one of the PC definitely will give you the narrative details of the crimes. So that would help, I think.
Okay, I'm gonna thank you, Christian. I'm gonna move us on. I'm gonna bring in Jeff, then Sarah.
Thanks, Sachin. Thanks, Jan, for bringing up domestic violence earlier. There's one particular question I wanted to ask on that, which hasn't been covered by Jan already, and that is, if you look at the table on page 3 of the report, it shows a reduction of 14% on domestic violence this forward period this year over the same period last year. Yet at the same time, we're being told in the press that domestic violence has increased quite a lot because of sort of people being more pressured, locked in, and losing their jobs because of the situation. So that, you know, I hope the figure's right, but that doesn't seem to ring true to me for that reason. So if I could have some comments on that from Ed, I'd be very grateful. And the other point I'd like to raise really is only this afternoon, by sheer chance, a local resident here sort of not grabbed me literally, but grabbed me to talk about sort of the engagement with the local police. Previously, it's Tanya in this area, but there was a very good, you saw the officers walking about all the time in the town centre and surrounding roads, and there's a lot more higher level, I think, of community engagement. Now, clearly, I suspect COVID is probably the reason that's clearly decreased, but if I could have some comments on how that community engagement could possibly be picked up, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, I'm going to bring in Ed to start with, and then David.
So just to answer the first part of that in regards to the domestic abuse, I think if you look at page 36 of the report, it does show that over the rolling year, I think that the numbers are steadily rising in regards to the domestic abuse, is my reading in regards to the statistics there.
Sorry, that's
sorry,
right.
A question in regards to that?
That's right, but that seems inconsistent with page 3.
So I can come in here with your permission, Chair. Yeah, so on page 3, what it is a comparison that JAGS has done for us of the most recent 4 weeks with 4 weeks a similar time last year. So it's to some extent a short period versus another short period. And that does show reduction, which is encouraging. But Ed is absolutely spot on with the longer term continuous position, which is on page 36, which does actually show a with some fluctuations in it. And there has been an impact from COVID because we check in with our social care colleagues. We do their data as well. And we've noticed, despite an initial downturn, quite an increase in social care cases, family social care coming in where domestic violence, and the social workers anecdotally are saying they are concerned about the type of domestic abuse that they're seeing, the intensity or the severity of it as well. So it is a complex picture and it does change week to week. But I think generally what we're saying is there is a long-term increase in domestic abuse. I hope that helps.
Alex, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, it was only to say that I think that the two positions are compatible on the basis that, from Jeff's question, on the basis that one is what is reported and one is what is actually experienced in terms of helpline advice lines and things like that, which may not necessarily weave its way through into actual crime reports. So and I think we always know that this is an underreported crime. The question is by how much? And I think that the evidence that Jeff puts forward in terms of what has been learned through the pandemic to date just demonstrates a level of underreporting on this.
Great, thank you. Jeff, did you have any follow-up?
Well, thanks for that. That clarifies it. Clearly, it's not a good situation that DV appears to be increasing, but probably not surprising. And in terms of the community engagement?
In regards to community engagement, I'm going to just flip that round because I've been noting down a question that is taken that I've thought of taking from the statistics here, which was in regards to the public not knowing who their dedicated ward officers are. And I was going to ask that as a question to the panel. Bear in mind, your vast majority of councillors here representing the public. So how do you feel the residents would like to be, or how would be the best way for us to communicate that out to them? Because always we go back to, let's go on to Twitter, let's go on to the latest social media. However, 10 years ago we used to do it by leaflets and posters, and that seemed to mean that people knew us a lot better, but we don't do that anymore because everything's on Twitter. I don't agree in it. I think it's a lot better the old-fashioned style, but that's me. So that's why I'm asking you guys.
I don't think you'll get much disagreement on that point. I think what all councils say, a mixture of media is important, and I think there's lots of nodding to that. On the community, is there anyone that wants to come back on the community?
Yeah, I think just a quick report to Ed. Ed, I think the fact that people used to see the policemen around, their presence, generally people used to know who they are and they know when to see them. They expect them at a certain time of the day because they're consistent. I think that was the main way. Now, I know social media come into play, but a lot of people, or in a large part of the population, don't actually kind of go on social media. I mean, I don't like look at Facebook and Twitter and see what's going on in policing. So I expect a lot of the residents are that way. So that just disengages a few people. And I think that presence thing was the easiest one, but how that works now, again, yes, things are different.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to presence, or in regards to your officer numbers on Harrow, since the beginning of the year, you've now got more dedicated ward officers on Harrow than you had at the beginning. Partly due to the amount of officers that we're getting in. We're also getting a number of police now officers who have started. I've been in charge of posting them across the whole of the BCU, but being the Harrow Safe Neighbourhoods officer, I've always made sure my teams are fully staffed. So in regards to your community, I've always made sure that you've got as many officers as I can do in regards to that. In regards to the presence, that's something that's, I'm afraid, has been around since I joined the police 2 decades ago. So I don't know what's going to be the answer to it, I'm afraid.
I think one of the difficulties at the moment is whereas before people would see the officers about and then they could go and talk to them. So if there was an issue or whatever, however petty it was, that they had that contact, personal contact, whereas now people are avoiding personal contact.
Yeah, and that's part of the situation that we're in. Hopefully that's going to change, fingers crossed, in the next 6 months to a year. We will be able to start doing such things as the street briefings. One of the things that I'm started getting my officers to do across the whole of the BCU is bring back in what we were doing last year, which was community walk-alongs. So you'll start seeing them being run out through the Safer Neighbourhoods boards, or Safer Neighbourhood panel, should I say, inviting yourselves and members of the community to come on walk-alongs with those officers, point out issues around the local neighbourhoods, as well as see us what we're dealing with.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Krishna on this point, and then I'm going to move us on. Sarah has been waiting a while, so I'm going to bring Krishna and then move on to Sarah.
Yeah, Jeff, this is the point that I raised it at the London Council a couple of days ago, saying that you try to build a good relationship with the Safer Neighbourhood team, and within a few months they get shifted to another ward or another borough, and similarly to the sergeant and even the borough commanders. They don't stay for long enough, especially in Harrow. So that is So I've asked the deputy mayor for policing to, look into these to see that whether they can make the people kind of permanent within our borough, so that in the long run we could have a trust. As you're saying, the trust is missing. Everything is missing from residents to the Met Police. So it will be done. I think the action plan is going forward. They will implement sooner or later. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Ed, did you want to come in on that point?
Yeah, it's just to reassure the panel in regards to some of the comments there. Firstly, in regards to the PC level, we have had a turnover. I do not disagree with what the council is saying in regards to that. Part of that has been the influx of officers, and we've had to bear the nice headache of being able to have such new recruits coming through the system, because otherwise our colleagues on the response team would have been overloaded with inexperienced officers. In order to facilitate that, I have had to swap and change some of the older stalwarts of the DWOs in order to spread the experience across the whole of Harrow. It's not just Harrow, it's across the BCU as well. So there has been those movements. We are going to be continuing to recruit. However, I don't know if it's going to be at the same sort of rate that we have had in the last 12 months. So that will mean that come hopefully June time, we'll start to see some of that settling down. Also, part of it is due to the rotations of the probationers as part of their probation pathway in order to make them a well-rounded officer. They do 6 months on safe neighbourhoods and they do 6 months on response team. At the end of that 12-month period, they will then be given an option whether they go to response team or safe neighbourhoods. Again, that will be their permanent home once they get there. This is also part of the turnover. We are representative of our community, and the London community is quite a transient community, and we are quite a transient police service. We have people who join from other areas of London or other areas of the country who then return homewards to other police forces, depending on where they are in their life cycle in regards to having families. Also, we have officers who have career paths that they wish to make, which does mean that they do move on at certain points to try and put in a tenure to keep them within an area and safe neighbourhoods may become slightly less attractive to certain officers because they may not have a career path that they want to make. In regards to the sergeants on Harrow, you have probably the most settled group of sergeants that you've got across the whole of BCU. Some of them have been here for as long as I've been back at Harrow as an inspector for 5 years. So that is quite a long time in regards to the sergeants. In regards to the inspectors, there has been a bit of a turnover in the last few years because we've gone from 3 5 years ago, which would have been Vicky Brown, Tanya and myself. And that is now down to me, mainly because Vicky and Tanya have retired. And we've got a number of officers who are inspectors who are in charge of Harrow. So I'm now one day when I step back down from being a chief inspector, I will be the highest ranking officer on Harrow. And I've been here for 5 years, so you've been reasonably settled with regards to the rank structure there.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move us on to Sarah now. Thank you for waiting, Sarah.
No, thank you. And thanks very much for that. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions around the MOPAC Violence Reduction Unit and initiatives taking place in schools, and I think they're potentially interrelated. So the first question is, how is the council and the police assessing the impact of the Violence Reduction Unit initiatives in schools, and what actions are they taking to respond to that impact? And then secondly, I think 2020 has been obviously unprecedented for so many reasons. Schools were closed for a substantial chunk of time during the year. They're now open. Does that mean that the initiatives have had to change in nature? Police able to get back into schools because of social distancing, not just police, but the other kind of initiatives that are taking place, being able to get back into schools again, and impacts on funding as well? Is that going to roll over into subsequent academic years as well? Thank you.
Great. Who's going to? I start with Ed. Ed, I think you might need to move your microphone down because I think we were struggling hearing you before. Yeah, great.
It was getting in the way of my tea.
Got
to keep hydrated. In regards to my Safe Schools officers, they are getting back into the schools. I have been making sure that we do get as close as we can to with capacity of officers within the Safe Schools for Harrow, as well as for the rest of the BCU. We have also fully staffed our youth engagement teams or as near as we can do. There are obviously, as I say, fluctuations in regards to officer numbers on occasions. However, when you look at the schools officers for the primary school years, they are a settled cohort of officers. It's not somebody that has switched over very often. In regards to measuring that, I'm afraid I don't have that data on me to be able to answer that one for you, Sarah. However, I do know that the officers are continuing to impact. How is money going to impact in regards to that? I will wait to see the new financial year.
Great. David, because
Thank you.
Yeah, to pick up the measurement point, we have a number of interventions going on. I mean, there's a number of different things that both our police colleagues and some of the voluntary sector organisations we work with are delivering in our schools. And the way we're trying to measure the impact is it's quite complex to isolate the different interventions, as you can probably imagine. But what we are trying to do is, where there have been specific interventions either funded by MOPAC or the Home Office or other areas, is to look at we look at the permanent exclusion rate from that school and the fixed term exclusion rate and the reasons behind them. Not always brilliantly recorded, but we can use that and then compare that with a school, for example, which hasn't had that intervention recently. As I say, there's something going on in most schools, so I don't think we get a brilliant control group there. And we try and look at, for example, around violence, we look at the under 25 victims of violence, which is a really important measure, and how that's impacting across there. So there's a number of different things we're doing. We're actually designing something at the moment to try and understand better what the impact of interventions in schools around violence reduction is. So I hope we will be able to update in the future about what that evaluation work shows us about the impact of the different interventions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Alex.
I guess just on the funding bit, Sarah, we are guaranteed in this mayoral lifetime to get another 50,000 next year. However, in terms of what the broader impact is on the mayor's overall budget following COVID, etc., and what that means for post-21, or in effect going into the 22-23 financial year and beyond, we don't know. So we only have guarantee at the moment of everything rolling over from this financial year into next financial year and it remaining the same. So we'll get another 50k next year for violence reduction monies.
Thank you. Thanks.
Great. Jean.
And again, fine, thank you. Mine was really a positive comment, Ed and David, because I think a lot of the work that's being done is really being collated very well now. So, we understand as councillors, representatives, so we can let our residents know, but also we can participate in it. And I'm sure a lot of us attend our Safer Neighbourhood team briefings, and I find actually we've been very lucky in my ward and where I live that we've had a fair amount of continuity, at least with one of the officers going forward, and they do walk around the streets and in the park, etc. So we do see them, but I do understand that's not always able. The other aspect is OWL, and this is something that Alex has talked about a lot as well, and I'm on OWL, but is the take up for OWL effective? Does it help?
Ed?
I can speak in regards to Harrow, Brent and Barnet in regards to that, and all I hear is positive comments around OWL. Again, you might guess from my earlier comments, about 10 years ago, I loved my gadgets. These days, that very technology has gone way past me, and I rely on my teenage children to tell me about them. So I don't know. I don't really do much twitting or anything like that myself, whether that's what it's called on OWL. But I do get positive comments. The feedback in regards to the interaction with the police is really good. We've had a number of positive outcomes from feedback that we've had from the community in regards to, for example, suspicious people going around areas.
What's up?
So anything that helps to improve that feedback system is always good. Unfortunately, I do worry in regards to sometimes the urgency of it. So, for example, if somebody isn't monitoring it, then will we get that data, that information coming back, and the person who's put that information on might then feel, well, I've fire and forget, I've done it. I don't need to ring 999 or 101.
Yeah.
So I don't want it to bypass the traditional routes. But I've heard nothing but positive comments in regards to it.
Good. Thank you.
Fantastic. So anyone else that wants to come in, if you, Carl, if you want to unmute yourself and say you do, if you're not able to use the hands up or I've missed you. No, in which case I deliberately left this question to the end because I don't want it to become a debate. But Ed knows, I've given Ed advance warning that I'm going to ask this question, and it's particularly about response times. We've had a lot of complaints about LTNs and the impact it's having on the police in affecting your response times to get to crimes and other things. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity just to comment on that and whether your view is it has affected response times or not.
Make sure me Britney Spears mic's down. So this was a question that came out from the council a few weeks ago, both to myself and Steve Leader, the head of the fire brigade. And I spoke to the main people who that's going to affect for us is going to be our response teams, who are the ones who are driving to the emergency calls. And I asked for their feedback and they said we hadn't even noticed.
Okay, great.
Looking at the response times over the last 4 weeks, we are in line with the rest of the BCU. So our target is 90%. We're hitting 80%, 86% of our I grades, and in Harrow it's 85.9, I believe, on average over the last few weeks. So we're in line with the rest of the BCU. Admittedly, there are some improvements needing to be made there.
Great. Okay, thank you. I just wanted that because this is the first opportunity since the LTNs for police to be at a formal council meeting. So I thought it was right to ask that question, but we don't want to turn this into a debate about LTNs because we've had lots of those. So on that note, I'm going to bring this item to a close. Again, it says chair to summarise outcomes, but I think what I'll say is we've had a really good debate, really good discussion about crime. Can I thank Krishna and the officers for coming? David, there's probably a few actions for you as well on some data. So thank you very much, as always, for stepping up to do that, and we look forward to seeing all that data. Thank you all. I'll move on to item 9, which is any other urgent business, which there isn't any. So at 8:26, I formally close the meeting. Ed, did you want to say something before I close the meeting?
No, I put my hand up just before you moved on to what the next bit was, which was going to be, my question was going to be, am I released to go?
No,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
You are of course released to go, and we've now finished the meeting. So thank you all.
Thanks
very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks all.
Thank you, Alex and
Thank you.
James.
Bye.
Thank you.